top story that we are breaking for you at this hour. Chanda Kochhar has been reappointed on the chair board as the chairperson of ICICI Securities. Let's bring in Ritu Singh, who's joining us on the phone line now with latest details on this breaking development. Ritu, thanks so much for joining in. And what exactly are you picking up about that crucial vote today?
Well, Nitya, the board of ICICI Bank, that is the parent of ICICI Securities, has once again made its stance on the entire Chanda Kochhar Videocon loan case extremely clear. Back in March, they had supported Chanda Kochhar when the case first came to light. Again, in today's annual general meeting, the bank voted in favor of reappointing Chanda Kochhar as on the board of the company as well as the chairperson of ICICI Securities. Remember, the parent had a crucial role to play. This was, this was a normal resolution that came up. As directors retire, they offer themselves for reappointment at the AGM. And ICICI Bank, the parent company, held holds, in fact, about a 79% stake in ICICI Securities. And therefore, them voting in favor of Chanda Kochhar is really the deciding factor. The results, the entire results of the AGM are yet to be published. But we've been able to gather from sources that ICICI Bank chose to go in favor of reappointing Chanda Kochhar. Once again, as I said, reaffirming their faith in the MD and CEO. So far, if you look at what the bank has done since the controversy regarding Videocon Group erupted, is to maintain a status quo, and that is exactly what they've done yet again. Despite allegations being leveled and investigations being conducted internally and externally, the bank has maintained her position as the MD and CEO, and even her position on the board of all of the other subsidiaries. So therefore, that's exactly what has happened yet again at today's AGM. It does send out a very clear signal of the stance that the bank has chosen to take in this entire matter, even as the investigations are still ongoing.
Well, let's bring in JN Gupta then, who's the former ED of SEBI and is joining us. Thanks so much for joining us, Mr. Gupta. And we are picking up, of course, Ritu just indicated Chanda Kochhar has been reappointed onto the board of ICICI Securities. Your initial reaction really to this development?
See, in our proxy advisory, we had also favored her appointment because as on date, we do not have anything legally against her. None of the regulatory agency, none of the lawmaking agency have found anything wrong with her. It is only allegation. And we as a policy have decided to wait till such time either SEBI comes out against her or Sri Krishna Commission comes out against her. Now, based on allegation alone, it would be a little bit unfair if we would have pointed her out and asked her to be voted out. So that is what, as far as we are concerned, which is not surprising. And more so, as you rightly said, the ICICI Bank being promoter of the company, having proposed her. So this result which had come out was the unexpected lines.
Amit, Tandon, since your advisory firm advised shareholders to vote against Mrs. Kochhar, how do you see this outcome? And are you surprised at all, given that, the bank itself offered her up for reappointment? So this was expected, right?
Look, let me first begin and explain our position on the whole thing. Our view was that she's not in a position to discharge her responsibilities. And if she's not in a position to discharge her responsibilities, there's no purpose being served by appointing her on the board. The other thing which we as a proxy firm strongly believe in is that if you were to look at governance, it actually begins where regulations stop. And in that, we might be different, our recommendation and our thinking might be different from the other proxy advisory firms which are operating in the market, which might take a little bit of a more legal view. Having said it, I think ICICI Bank has taken a legal view, their point being that the whole matter is being investigated. There are no issues with it at the moment, and therefore there is no harm in her continuing. In one sense, you could also be a little bit sympathetic to their view that, look, once the investigation is over and nothing is, no evidence of wrongdoing is found, then she will just continue and it would be business as usual. So
Okay.
There is, from a bank's perspective, there is a way to operate. But as I said, as a voting advisory firm, we are on the different, sitting across the table from the bank on this one.
Sure. Mr. Gupta, since you spoke in favor of reappointing Mrs. Chanda Kochhar, given that, the fact of the matter is that no allegation has been proved so far. But what I want to ask you is this, that, do you, as Mr. Tandon was pointing out, see any reputational risk or any regulatory risk, extending to ICICI Securities by virtue of being the parent company of the bank that is currently facing this issue?
See, I would say that we have examined this case in detail and we came to this conclusion for the simple reason Sri Krishna Commission has already been appointed and its report is going to come in another 2-3 months' time. So our issue was that whatever risk is there, we will come to know only after the Krishna Commission comes out with the report. And for whatever damage has been done has already been done. Nothing more could happen. If something is wrong, it is wrong. But we are not aware what is wrong. So 3 months' time will not be material here and there. And if something comes out after 3 months, she will certainly have claim. By the legal process, there is nothing that we will...
Mr. Gupta...
Yeah.
Mr. Gupta, while I appreciate your point, and that is, the stance of the bank as well, you can't implicate someone when allegations have not been proven against them. But that said, do you think from a governance point of view, the board of ICICI Bank has once again missed an opportunity to, sort of take the right thing to do right now would be perhaps to ask her to abstain or perhaps to ask her to offer herself for reappointment once the matter is settled and not, while the investigations are ongoing?
I would say, yes, there could be 2 points of view. One is very simply the person is of a conscience which is the greatest possible conscience, then probably he or she would not have offered herself for election. To some extent, it shows that she is confident that she has not done anything wrong. Because the person who is at the high conscience will not offer herself for appointment. So based on that, but again, we could be wrong because we do not know what is the truth. As Amit has rightly pointed out, as on date, none of us know what is the truth. It could be that she is on the right side or it could be that she is on the wrong side. Now, today the choice was with us whether we go with this theory that she is only there are only allegations, they have not been proved. So we went by this thing that allegations are allegations and not proved. So we took a cautious stance that we said we will go ahead. That is what it is today.
Thank you, Mr. Gupta. Mr. Tandon, just some closing comments from you as well. You had highlighted the, reputational risks that ICICI Securities faces if, Chanda Kochhar's reappointment is in fact confirmed. Now, given that is the case, do you believe investors of ICICI Securities have a reason to worry?
Our view is a little bit of counterfactual. Where we are coming from is that given the fact that this whole matter is now being investigated and it's an investigation which was launched by the ICICI Bank board itself, for them to nominate her continue with her nomination on the board, opens the company up to far greater reputational risk than the fact that, look, someone is on the board and charges have been brought against them. So just given the circumstances, we believe that the right thing would have been that for her to step aside or for her not to be nominated at this stage. We have to remember that she's here by virtue of being the chairperson, by being the managing director of ICICI. Once the investigation is over, she resumes her responsibilities as the managing director of ICICI Bank. She can come onto the securities, and as I have mentioned and as we've said in our voting advisory, we would be happy to support her appointment at that stage.